Well, the 2022 Winter Olympics are underway in Beijing right now. And while the record low ratings for NBC's primetime opening coverage on Thursday suggests a large disinterest in the Games, there has been a growing attention on the human rights abuses of the Chinese Communist Party, something that even NBC had to acknowledge, though the network later sounded more like the mouthpiece for the CCP.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that while Western countries may be boycotting these Olympics over human rights issues, China styles itself as a champion of the developing world, and it has plenty of support in countries from Africa to Latin America, where its investments are building up local economies.
Yes, but those investment building up local economies through their Belt and Roads Initiative come with strings, as some countries are now finding out. Well, throughout this week, we're going to devote a segment each day to highlight the human rights abuses of the Chinese Communist Party. We're calling it Human Rights on Ice. And by the way, YouTube has taken down part of our program from Friday where we discussed the Olympics, and I'm sure this program may disappear as well. The reason the International Olympic Committee did not give us permission to use footage of the Olympic coverage. I'm sure if we made excuses for China's human rights abuses, as the IOC and NBC have done, there would not be a problem. But I can assure you, we will not turn a blind eye to the persecution that is taking place of Christians and others in China. Here to kick off our discussion on what's going on in China is Congressman Chris Smith, ranking member of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, senior member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and ranking member on the Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, Global Human Rights, and International Organizations. He represents the 4th Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman Smith, welcome back to the program.
Tony, thank you so very much for having me on and for, again, your great work that you do at FRC.
Well, I appreciate that. Chris, you are Congress's foremost expert on international human rights and religious freedom abuses. You've been doing this for decades. You have been visiting China to meet with Christians there as far back as the 1990s. How would you describe the direction that China has been going over the last few decades?
Well, after Tiananmen Square, there was an opportunity that was unfortunately fumbled by our government, and especially by Bill Clinton, when he delinked most favored nation status from human rights. And that was May 26, 1994. And what the Chinese dictatorship, the Chinese Communist Party did was then pay lip service to, oh, we don't have any human rights abuses, and to look us and the rest of the world in the eye and say, all you care about is profits. And I care about profits, but with conditions. And those conditions have been completely eviscerated by administration after administration, especially during the Obama years, among the worst. And now we have this dictator, Xi Jinping, who thinks he's the reincarnation, I say that with quotation marks, of Mao Zedong. He is brutal. He shows absolutely no mercy. He has designs on other countries throughout the world, especially in the region. He's building up a military that is soon to be second to none, nuclear capability, and all of it, in one way or another, came from us. And the human rights abuses, whether it be the genocide against the Uyghurs, as you know, because you worked so well on the Religious Freedom Commission as one of the commissioners, the crushing of all faiths, the sinodization, making every faith comport itself to Xi Jinping's ideology, which is anti-God and anti-person, anti-human being. They are doing everything at the barrel of a gun. Through torture. I've had hearings. I've chaired 75 congressional hearings on human rights abuses in China. One of them on the Olympics last March, again, asking this administration move to have the venue changed. This is the 1936 Olympics, Tony, all over again with the Nazis. And even the torchbearer, they have a Uyghur woman who we haven't heard from lately because she didn't do very well in her event, just showcasing like somehow the Uyghurs are accepted. Xi Jinping is committing genocide against them, completely trying to wipe them off the face of the earth or change them so completely through forced abortion of their children, the concentration camps, and of course, all of the other tortures that are being visited upon them. It's unprecedented. in modern times in a way, but it harkens back to other genocides like done by the Nazis.
Well, Congressman Smith, to the credit of the Biden administration, they did do a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics. I'm with you. I think the IOC should have moved to another venue and not given China this distinction of holding both the Summer and the Winter Olympics in Beijing and being able to whitewash their image. But you made a reference back to the most favored nation status when it came to trade. And I remember, and there's a benefit of longevity because, the media doesn't go back and report things that, happened 10 or 15, 20 years ago that's not favorable toward the ideology and the worldview they're pushing. But we heard from corporate America that we just needed to welcome China into the Western world, do business with them, and we will change them. Well, it appears to me, Congressman Smith, that it wasn't corporate America that helped change China, but China has changed corporate America.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Corporate America has pandered, kowtowed, in order to gain access to the market and to retain it over time to make huge profits. The labor pool in China has no basic protections around them. They have some, but not anything that would even come close to our workplace protections. They don't pay them very much. So there's an exploitation. They don't allow labor unions, whether you like them or not. In a place like China, they are desperately needed because the state runs everything. And these corporations just become compliant. And they're doing it. We're seeing it with the Olympics. Money being made, maybe it won't be as much as they thought, but they'll keep their market access because they were willing to say, yes, my liege, whatever Xi Jinping wants, they are ready to do. I asked at one of our hearings, Coca-Cola and some of the other participants, what do you have to say about the genocide? As all of this is happening in Beijing, particularly with the opening ceremonies, people are being tortured horribly. What do you have to say? They wouldn't say anything. Coca-Cola, which did all that virtue signaling about the voter law in Georgia, and I'm a believer that you need a photo ID to ensure that the franchise of voting, which is very sacred, is honest and fair, and you are who you say you are. What is wrong with that? And yet when it comes to a massive genocide, the horrible imposition of martial law around the country, but the way they've mistreated the Hong Kongers, and I'm the author of the Hong Kong Human Rights Democracy Act that passed the House, Marco Rubio over on the Senate, and we're saying, all those promises made are gone. Hong Kong has been crushed. Taiwan is probably next, and yet these corporations are complicit, shamefully, in all of this. I had a hearing, Tony, you might recall, back in 2005 with IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, and Yahoo. Got an 8-hour hearing. I swore them in because I wanted to make sure they were under oath, and asked them all about how they could be censoring the Chinese people and working with the ubiquitous secret police to crush people in their everyday lives, particularly the human rights and religious freedom advocates. They just basically said, we're following orders. We're just following Chinese law made by the Chinese Communist Party. And people went to prison because of what they did, were tortured, and worse, even died. I opened up by talking about IBM and the Holocaust, a book that I had read that talked about how IBM worked very closely with the Gestapo. And I said, there are parallels, real parallels. Be involved there, but be involved with conditionality. And the U.S. government has failed miserably on that. And you said it right. They're changing the corporations. They've changed the U.S. government. And that is, to a very large extent with many administrations. But I think Clinton was the worst.
Just about a minute left, Congressman Smith. But you also were the Republican sponsor of the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, which did pass Congress. But corporate America actually opposed that. So you had to fight against corporations to actually get this measure through.
No, that's very, very important to note. And added to that, the administration, by many accounts, did not want it, did not want to sign it. Then they embraced it. Now I'm holding my breath, frankly, waiting for them to implement it aggressively. What it does is say there's a presumption that anything that comes out of Xinjiang, which is the region where the Uyghurs are, the Muslims, and where they're committing genocide, it's presumed that the presumption is it's made with Gulag labor. slave labor, not the other way around. If a company can prove that it wasn't, then that can come in and there's no import ban. I'm going to be introducing a new bill very shortly that goes back to the old significant progress in human rights, or they don't have the equivalent of most favored nation status, so huge tariffs would be added to their products. They're an export economy. We have real leverage. Let's use it.
Congressman Chris Smith, let me again thank you for your leadership on behalf of human rights and persecuted minorities and Christians around the world. We're grateful for your leadership and appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for the privilege of being on. Thank you, Tony.
All right.